Starting off our list at number 10 is Apocalypse. If it wasn't for his goal of mutant domination and evolution, Apocalypse would vaporize the X-Men whenever he wanted to, and even if that wasn't how he did it, he has the capacity to wipe out the X-Men in a whole handful of ways. For starters, Apocalypse is what is called an external. These are mutants who are immortal, share a psychic connection, and who can revive themselves, so he can just never be permanently taken down, and he has been around for about 5,000 years. Apocalypse's original mutant ability was to be able to control his molecular structure, but over time, with the mentality of survival of the fittest, he has enhanced his abilities and even gained new ones through the use of celestial technology, celestial armor, and at least 2 different techno-organic viruses. He can do a lot with his molecular manipulation, including heal himself and turn his limbs into simple melee weapons, but also technologically complex weapons like plasma cannons. But I think the most impressive thing he can do is consciously and subconsciously grant himself a huge amount of powers at will. That makes him too much for the MCU already, and we haven't even talked about his celestial energy manipulation, his psionic abilities, or any of his countless horsemen of the apocalypse, all of whom were given power boosts by this unstoppable mutant. Coming in at number 9 is Thanos. Now before you come for me in the comments about how Thanos is literally already in the MCU, I want to point out the little fact that the version of Thanos from the MCU is like a schoolboy compared to the comic book version of Thanos. Thanos in the comics is an absolute monster. In the MCU, Thanos is fueled by an altruistic motive to help the universe. In the comics, he straight up enjoys taking people's lives. Thanos is essentially an omnicidal maniac. He's extremely prideful, violent, deceptive, malevolent, treacherous, and ruthless to the point that he doesn't care about sacrificing innumerable planets and civilizations, even his own race, in order to praise his love, Mistress Death, and gain her affection. Thanos also possesses an insatiable hunger for power, always seeking to obtain objects of incalculable might and influence, such as the cosmic cubes or the infinity gems. He does all that while speaking in a super sophisticated, calm, and collected demeanor, which they did get right in the MCU, I'll give them that. Not only that, but being a massive hulking Eternal with a deviant gene, Thanos is one of the most powerful of the Eternals of Titan, with an innate ability to synthesize cosmic energy, allowing for energy and matter manipulation. Thanos in the MCU is no pushover, sure, but comic book Thanos, he puts him to shame. Number 8, Zom. We have seen the character of Dormammu in the MCU. He was an insanely powerful mystical entity who Doctor Strange had to basically lose to 1,000,000 times and trick to defeat. Well, it took all of comic book Dormammu's power plus the help of the cosmic being Eternity just to restrain the extra-dimensional monster known as Zom, with the magical links of living bondage and the crown of blindness. And with these tools, these massively powerful beings only managed to trap Zom in an amphora, in a world beyond all worlds, in a time beyond all time. Well, when Umar, the sister of Dormammu, invaded Earth and Doctor Strange could not defeat her, he needed some way to put her down. The Ancient One told Doctor Strange about Zom, and Doctor Strange decided that he was going to unleash the monster to easily defeat Umar. Now, I don't know why the Ancient One thought this would be a good idea, because now, being free and not wanting to go back, Zom turned on Doctor Strange. Zom is so powerful that there was absolutely nothing that Doctor Strange could even do. Even if all the reality warping heroes and all the Avengers combined forces, they would not be able to defeat Zom. It took the power of the living tribunal, the representative of the one above all and the judge of the multiverse, who had not even been seen in Marvel Comics before this point, to just whisk him away. The tribunal then scolded Doctor Strange for summoning a being who could literally wipe out the multiverse. Zom has no other goal than to completely annihilate and destroy everything. Ever. Now, Strange has since channeled Zom in extremely dire situations, and that's the only time I could really imagine the MCU even mentioning his name. Number 7, The Void. Bob Reynolds was granted the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns after consuming the Golden Sentry serum, which was a much more potent offshoot of the original Super Soldier serum. He has photokinetic-based powers fueled by the sun itself that include molecular manipulation, immortality, insane super strength, speed, invulnerability, stamina, agility, reflexes, and senses, flight, teleportation, energy absorption and blasts, psionic abilities, and even reality warping abilities within a small area. He used his powers for the greater good of all, and he was the example of what a hero should be. He had connections to Iron Man, was active during the years just prior to the Fantastic Four's emergence. He became a role model for Spider-Man as well as an ally to the X-Men and equal to Reed Richards and a friend to the Hulk. The thing about the Sentry is that he's accompanied by a dark persona called the Void. The Void has all the same abilities plus seemingly even more. The Void went on a rampage that took the lives of around 1 million people and almost destroyed Manhattan. Full rosters of the Avengers, X-Men, and the Fantastic Four all went to take on the Void, and they couldn't do a thing. Only the Sentry himself could really subdue the Void, and it wasn't even permanent. Now later on in the Siege event, Norman Osborn used the Sentry to attack Asgard, but this accidentally unleashed the Void, and it totally obliterated Asgard completely, taking out Loki in the process. Now this did actually branch off into a what-if story where the Void was never stopped and destroyed every superhero on Earth, and then went off to destroy the universe. The Sentry is basically a god, and the Void is this god's devil. They may be adding the Sentry to the MCU soon, but I seriously doubt they will make this character or his opposite as powerful as they are in the comics. Number 6. Knull. Knull is the literal eldritch god of all symbiotes. He's their creator. Knull existed before the current version of the universe ever even came to be, in the black void of nothingness. One of his very first acts after he was awoken by the light created by the foundation of the universe was creating the all-black Necrosword. This was the very first symbiote, and it was immensely powerful. Using it, Knull was able to slice the head clean off of a Celestial. For this insane feat of power, he was banished to a void where he worked more and more on the sword, and eventually he broke free and went out into the universe with the intent of wiping out various gods until he was defeated and he lost the sword to Gore the God Butcher. And if we want to talk about villains who should have been more powerful in the MCU, he is top of the list. Knull then goes on to make more and more symbiotes who all share a hive mind under the control of Knull. They eventually rebel and imprison Knull inside the symbiote homeworld Clintar, but he is one of the strongest villains Marvel Comics has ever shown us. He faced off against all the Earth's heroes and nearly won. He has awoken, enslaved, and controlled Celestials, and even defeated the Sentry, ripping him in half and absorbing the Void. The only thing that defeated him was Eddie Brock's Venom wielding the Unit Power, aka Captain Universe, the protector of the universe, and the opposite to everything that Knull represents.
Number 5. Magneto. Ultimate Magneto has all the powers that the original does, but none of his mercy. He doesn't just view mutants as superior to humans, he views humans as insects. In one of his most amazing moments, he stormed Washington with sentinels that he had reprogrammed and dragged the president naked onto the White House lawn to kill him. The only reason that he was stopped by the X-Men was because his own son, Quicksilver, saw that things had gone too far and betrayed his father, removing his helmet with his super speed. In his biggest plot, he actually proved how much of a nearly unstoppable force he could really be. In Ultimatum, Magneto had been driven mad at the loss of his children, and he decided that rather than destroying humanity in order to make the world safe for mutants, he's just gonna kill everyone. He uses a doomsday device and his powers to shift the world off of its axis, causing disasters all over the globe. Much of Europe, including all of Latveria, is frozen under a layer of ice, and New York is hit by a massive tidal wave. Millions of people all over the world die in the attack. He plans on using the plan again to decimate the rest of the world, but all of the heroes left in the world team up to stop him, and Cyclops ends up killing him. But the fact that he got as far into his plan as he did, and that it took literally every hero in the world working together to stop him, is pretty impressive. Number 4. Apocalypse. So the 1610 version of Apocalypse is one of the most changed versions of a classic villain. This universe's Mr. Sinister was a scientist who had a psychotic break and believed himself to be working at the behest of Apocalypse. He made Mr. Sinister track down and kill several mutants, believing that it would cause his master to manifest on Earth. When he had completed his task, Sinister floated into the air and was transformed into Apocalypse. The X-Men attacked him but didn't count on his ability to take their mutant powers away. He tore off Wolverine's arm and battled both the X-Men and the Morlocks, and used his powers to make the two groups fight each other against their will. He then fought a group of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents and the Fantastic Four, who couldn't hurt him in the slightest. Professor X then attacked with his mental powers, but Apocalypse was somehow able to resist and overpower the Professor. It would have been curtains for Charles, but Jean Grey unleashed the Phoenix Force and destroyed the villain. So, he was able to take on the combined forces of the Morlocks, S.H.I.E.L.D., the X-Men, and the Fantastic Four, and the only force powerful enough to cause him any trouble at all was the Phoenix Force, which, by the way, is much less villainous in the Ultimate Universe. Number 3, the Hulk. In the mainline Marvel Universe, the Hulk is a misunderstood creature who will go on rampages, but goes out of his way to protect innocent people, and ultimately does more good than harm. The Ultimate Hulk is a bit different. In this universe, Bruce Banner grew up hating his scrawny body, and was working to develop a new version of the Super Soldier Serum, which he tested on himself, transforming him into the Hulk. This Hulk causes a lot more collateral damage than his 616 version, routinely causing hundreds of deaths when rampaging through cities. He is also known for eating people that he doesn't like. He did a few heroic acts, but on the whole, he has done a lot more harm with his frequent rampages and his eventual team up with the villainous Maker to fight the Ultimates, the 1610 version of the Avengers. Like the classic Hulk, there are very few characters who can stand up to Hulk, and even if they do, his healing factor is so efficient that any injuries will soon be healed. If that wasn't intimidating enough, there was a time where this evil Hulk stole the Infinity Gems and used them to fight the heroes. So Hulk with an Infinity Gauntlet. Yikes. Number 2, the Green Goblin. This is the villain that got one of the biggest makeovers in the Ultimate Universe. Norman Osborn was trying to develop a super soldier serum, which he called the Oz formula. After an Oz-infected spider bit Peter Parker and gave him spider powers, Norman theorized that since the Oz and spider DNA had made Peter the way he was, injecting himself with Oz mixed with his own DNA would turn him into a heightened version of himself. Instead, it turned him into a hideous giant goblin creature. While the 616 Goblin has super strength and uses a glider with pumpkin bombs, this Goblin had insane super strength as well as fortified tissues that made him very difficult to hurt. He had a powerful healing factor and could launch fiery bolts of energy from his hands. True, Spider-Man would often foil his plans and he was presumed dead several times, but his real ace in the hole is that the Oz formula made him immortal, so he would always return to life. So, even if you could stop him, it would never be long before he returned for revenge. Number 1, the Maker. Reed Richards is often called the smartest man alive in the Marvel Universe, and alongside the Fantastic Four, is one of Earth's greatest heroes. His ego has often led to him making some questionable decisions, but he has been instrumental in saving the Earth from several threats, including Galactus and the Skrull. Despite his heroics, we did witness a spectacular fall from grace for Reed in the Ultimate Comics universe, where the combined stress of the Fantastic Four breaking up and Sue Storm rejecting his marriage proposal caused Reed to snap and blow up his childhood home to fake his death, killing his family in the process. He went on to use aliens under his control to attack the heroes. He was eventually defeated and disfigured by the Human Torch and flung into the negative zone. But Reed returned to Earth and took on the identity of the Maker, and set out on a twisted quest to make the world perfect. He killed all the Asgardians in an attempt to understand Thor's power, and used an antimatter attack on Washington, D.C., killing POTUS, his cabinet, and all of Congress. The Maker went on to do a lot of twisted stuff, fighting the heroes of his own Earth as well as the heroes of Earth 616, showing just how dangerous Reed Richards can be when his massive brain is turned against Marvel's heroes. He is the ultimate threat to the Ultimate Universe, and just as dangerous to the 616 universe. Number 10. Dr. Doom. Some of you are already typing your comments claiming that Victor Von Doom is not a villain and is instead an anti-hero. I would disagree, saying that he's at best an anti-villain, but honestly, if I didn't include him, I'd be getting just as many comments complaining about his exclusion, so let's put him at the bottom and agree that Dr. Doom started out as a villain and has become more nuanced and difficult to peg down in the years since. Victor Von Doom was the child of Romani people living in Latveria. His mother was a sorceress years, and after her and his father's passing, Victor began to study her books, teaching himself the dark arts. He also developed a keen scientific mind, which made him a legendary scientist and inventor at a very young age, and led to him being tracked down by the US military and offered further education in the States. It was here that he met Reed Richards, with whom he developed a lifelong rivalry. While still in school, he developed his infamous Doom bots and also built a functional time machine. He was disfigured in an accident that resulted in his expulsion, and he went on to become the leader of some monks who helped him build his iconic armor. He became the main antagonist of the Fantastic Four and the dictator of the country of Latveria, causing lots of problems for the heroes of the Marvel Universe. His status as one of the most brilliant minds on Earth, as well as him being one of the Earth's most powerful sorcerers, combined with his diplomatic immunity, makes him a force to be reckoned with for both the heroes and the villains of the Marvel Universe.
And at number 9 is Sabertooth. Sabertooth is like the darker, bigger, and stronger brother of Wolverine. He isn't actually Wolverine's brother, but the fights between Wolverine and Sabertooth were the absolute most bloody, knockdown, drag-out, legendary fights that go to such drastic extremes, and that's because neither of these guys can really be stopped, since they both possess an absolutely massive, powerful healing factor. They share a lot of qualities, honestly. Sabertooth has adamantium-laced bones and claws, superhuman senses, superhuman attributes, and even psionic resistances as well. The thing about Sabertooth is that he is just pure animalistic fury, a mindless killing machine, but one who has the training to make him just that much more of a force to be reckoned with. Even when he is stopped, he's almost never fully destroyed because of that damn healing factor that makes him next to impossible to bring down. Sure, he doesn't warp reality or cross-dimensional barriers, but even when he was thrown into the pit on Krakoa, where he was trapped alive but unable to move, he still proved a problem as he figured out how to escape.
Magneto. When Mac Eisenhart was a young man in Germany, he was subjected to many atrocities at the hands of the Third Reich, who sent him to Auschwitz for no reason other than being Jewish. He eventually escaped and became known as Erich Lenscher. He discovered that he had the ability to control the powers of magnetism, and after the war, used them to track down former German soldiers. He developed the belief that mutants and humanity could not coexist and became Magneto, a mutant dedicated to mutant superiority and the leader of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. He fought the X-Men several times over the years, but they eventually came to an uneasy truce, working together to form a refuge for their kind on the island of Krakoa, which is good for everyone as Magneto is a very difficult villain to stop and has stood up to the entire Avengers team, once reversed the Earth's magnetic poles, and also created a global EMP which took out the world's technology, showing that he could plunge us back to the Dark Ages whenever he wants.
Number 7. Apocalypse. The name of the game for Apocalypse, or En Sabanur, is survival of the fittest. His powers manifested back in ancient Egypt with the powers of immortality and the ability to alter the molecular structure of his own body. Now, we unfortunately have to talk about time travel here. I'm sorry. While Apocalypse has history with Kang the Conqueror as Rama Tut, the more important time traveler that Apocalypse deals with is Nathan Summers, aka Cable. In the future world of Cable, Apocalypse had conquered the world, so in order to stop that, Nathan went back to ancient Egypt to defeat Apocalypse. Now during that fight, the techno-organic arm of Cable bonded to Apocalypse, who used it to interact with a celestial spaceship and integrate all of its technology into himself, amplifying and enhancing his existing powers, allowing him to do pretty much anything. He can teleport, interface with any technology, grant himself almost any power like strength, flight, energy beams, telepathy, telekinesis, and all kinds of stuff. Obviously, it all depends on the story he's in. He's so incredibly OP that his powers wax and wane based on the story. Like in the X-Men animated TV show, he grew to like 1,000 feet tall and just used energy beams to completely vaporize the X-Men. And that could totally happen in the comics too at any point if it served the story. Usually he just sends out his horsemen to test the mutants though. The thing that makes him even more unstoppable is his ability to move his spiritual essence into new host bodies when his physical body is either worn out from his massive power or destroyed in a fight.
Number 6. Hela. Hela is the daughter of Loki, who was appointed by Odin to be the goddess of death. He would come to regret this choice, as Hela soon began several attempts to steal his and his son Thor's souls and to conquer Asgard for herself. In one of her most disturbing plots, she cursed Thor with immortal life, but a frail and decrepit body. She eventually reversed this and moved to Las Vegas, where she began to feed upon the souls of the unlucky. As the goddess of death, she can't really die, and is able to heal any injury with great speed, even being able to come back from disintegration. She has the power to kill immortal beings with a simple touch, making her a force to be reckoned with for Thor, let alone the normal human heroes he works with.
Number 5. Dormammu. Most fans of Doctor Strange know Dormammu. This being composed of pure magic energy rules the dark dimension and spends most of his time taking over other realities as he finds them. He's essentially immortal and capable of wielding godly power over magic, the dead, souls, and pretty much anything, really. When he is in our reality, he can be thwarted and returned to his own, usually by the Sorcerer Supreme, but within the dark dimension, he reigns supreme and cannot be taken down, like, at all. Using his vast magical abilities and the influence of his power, he is constantly trying to invade our reality, and even when he is banished back or he is stopped, he always comes back eventually, and he has been doing this for millennia. Number 4. The Beyonder. The Beyonder is a singular entity with no duplicate versions of himself in other universes, similar to the Phoenix Force. And also a lot like the Phoenix Force, Beyonder is basically like a baby in that he is a younger member of a race called the Beyonders that are a near omnipotent alien race from a dimension outside of the multiverse. He is himself basically a whole universe. It's really hard to explain, but as he observes Earth and the Marvel Universe and the various races, he gets a little curious, and the Beyonder decides to study and analyze life and humanity, good and evil and conflict, and to that purpose he pits Earth's mightiest heroes and villains against each other in the Secret Wars. Now, he did this by destroying an entire system of planets and creating Battleworld from the remains and from parts of Earth, so that's one level of power right there. Beyonder's powers surpass that of Eternity and the Living Tribunal, but that has been retconned recently. And he is capable of manipulating reality to his will, being able to pretty much do whatever he wants and then grant himself any power he wants. It was actually a huge treat though last year in the Defenders Beyond story when we learned that the Beyonder and his race were actually still in existence, and he was now an adult existing with the rest of the adult Beyonders outside of the multiverse and being all levels of wildly insanely powerful. There's a lot I skimmed over here to make it less confusing, but you should just go read all the Secret Wars if you want to see how crazy these beings actually are. Number 3. Cyttorak. Cyttorak, also known as the Destroyer, is an incredibly powerful extra-dimensional being who was worshipped as a god and as a demon by the primitive humans of Earth until he was banished back to the Crimson Cosmos, which is where he comes from. Now, as the Destroyer, Cyttorak's main goal is to just cause destruction and raise destructive power. Simple as that. To do this though, from the Crimson Cosmos, and also to win a wager with 8 other godlike deities like himself, he created the Crimson Gem of Cyttorak, which allows him to select a person to be his avatar, enhancing them to become the indestructible and immortal Juggernaut, which kinda gives us 2 different versions of Unstoppable all wrapped up into one package. You're welcome. Merry Christmas. That's for you. As the Juggernaut is essentially a physically unstoppable force of kinetic energy, unless you're the Hulk, I guess, then you can stop him. I don't know why. Anyways, Cyttorak is such a powerful and unstoppable godlike entity that you will even hear magic users invoking his name to cast some of their strongest spells. For example, the Crimson Bands of Cyttorak. Number 2. The Chaos King. While he is relatively obscure, he is nothing to scoff at. Amatsu Mikobashi, first appearing in Thor Blood Oath number 6 in 2006, was mistaken as the Japanese god of chaos and evil, but in actuality, he was an aspect of the cosmic being Oblivion. Now, Mikobashi ruled and thrived over the Earth when it was nothing more than a formless void of primordial darkness. And as such, his goal now is to put an end to creation and bring about a new age of chaos and void and darkness. He is a primordial being who was imprisoned in Yomi, which is the Shinto underworld, which is where he remained for centuries, accruing an army of Oni, which is Shinma demons, and other monsters. Now, during the events of Ares, god of war, Chaos King attacks Olympus after he defeated and controlled the Japanese pantheon of gods, and after the fall of Asgard during Ragnarok. This is what kind of kickstarts his mission in Chaos War, where he slays the Egyptian gods, Celtic gods, Shi'ar gods, gods of Zen-La, he takes out Nightmare in the Dream Dimension, destroys Mephisto, and casts Mistress Death out of hell, making her literally run away. And he releases the souls of the damned. He did all that. He has the power to defeat eternity and is practically unfazed by attacks from the likes of Zeus. God Hercules, Galactus, Silver Surfer, and Thor together could not defeat Chaos King. To win, Hercules had to literally punch him into a portal to an endless void of nothingness, and this was after he destroyed 98.76% of the entire universe. That's a lot. Number 1. Chthon. Chthon is one of the most powerful demons to ever exist. Even though he predates anything like this, of all the devil-like demons out there, including Mephisto, Chthon is the closest thing to the actual devil. He and his Ngari actually ruled the earth before the angel Lucifer attacked them, and that was before Lucifer ever rebelled against heaven and became the actual devil. Chthon himself is responsible for all the witches, werewolves, vampires, and other dark creatures, as well as being the master of the most powerful form of magic, chaos magic, which is the same stuff used by the Scarlet Witch. The Scarlet Witch has altered all of reality with just a fraction of that magic, so yeah, it's a lot. His opposite, Oster, is one of the 3 beings that make up the Vishanti, and they stand in direct opposition to Chthon specifically, creating the Book of Vishanti in response to Chthon's Darkhold. Other demons and dark sorcerers, including Dormammu and Mephisto, call on Chthon's name to cast some of their strongest spells, and the Sorcerer Supreme, Doctor Strange, was almost corrupted and permanently taken out by Chthon's mere presence alone. He is extremely hard to bring down, and even if you manage to do so, it's only a matter of time until he comes back.
Number 10. Emperor Marka Ragnos. Marka Ragnos is a pretty spooky looking Sith Lord and Emperor. He battled Sith Lord Simus to become the new ruler of the Sith Empire, and take for himself the title of Dark Lord of the Sith. In his battle against Simus, he defeated him by separating his head from his body. Ragnos was a manipulative sort as Emperor, and managed to hold on to his rule for hundreds of years by pitting his rivals against one another, thereby eliminating them as threats to his own rule. Even after his death, Ragnos' presence was felt, and he reappeared as a Force Ghost, informing those who fought over his position that only the most worthy would succeed him. Millennia later, an attempt was actually made to even resurrect Ragnos using energy pulled from the Force through various Force nexuses found throughout the galaxy, and this attempt actually almost succeeded. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and if you think to yourself, man, I wish they did more Star Wars content, guess what? We have done some of that. You can go check out our Star Wars playlist for even more. Number 9. Savage Opress. Savage Opress is an interesting figure. He first appeared in Star Wars The Clone Wars. He is the younger brother of Darth Maul, who, like his brother, would also become a Sith Lord. However, he was also a Night Brother as well on his home world. As a Night Brother, he was chosen by Asajj Ventress to become her mate, pledging himself fully to her, and being bent by the Night Sisters' magics to obey her. To prove his loyalty to her, he even murdered his own brother. Not Darth Maul, of course, but instead his brother Farrell. Eventually, Opress would escape Ventress' control, breaking the spell that the Night Sisters had cast over him, and breaking off from both Ventress and his master Count Dooku. He would then go on to join up with Darth Maul, who eventually took him on as his own apprentice. Number 8. Darth Plagueis. Did you ever hear of the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? I thought not. It's not a story the Jedi would tell you. Darth Plagueis was the Sith Master of Darth Sidious, who many of course know more commonly by his other name, Emperor Palpatine. Plagueis himself had an obsession that runs all the way back to actually the creation of the Sith, and in fact could be cited as kind of the reason for the initial split in the Force. He wanted to discover the secret to eternal life, and eventually developed somewhat of an ability to prevent death and create even life. However, this ability would not save him in the end, as his apprentice Darth Sidious would eventually betray him, killing him in his sleep so that he might become the new master, taking Plagueis' power for himself. Plagueis is first mentioned in the prequel film Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith. Here, Emperor Palpatine tells Anakin the legend of Plagueis as he attempts to kinda lure him to the dark side. Although right after that, Anakin's basically like, I think this guy's a Sith Lord. Here, Emperor Palpatine refers to his former master as Darth Plagueis the Wise. It was likely because of Plagueis' pursuit of knowledge in bioengineering that Palpatine himself was in a fashion able to prolong his own life, although he too would obviously fail to become truly immortal, at least as far as we know. I hope that's where it stays. I hope he's gone. Oh my goodness. Could you imagine Emperor Palpatine just comes up again and we're like, oh my gosh, this guy. Number 7. Darth Malgus. Darth Malgus was originally known by his given name Veridon. As Veridon, he was raised in a part of space that was loyal to the Empire, and when his Force sensitivity first manifested, when he killed a servant, he was sent to the Sith Academy for further training, which honestly makes a lot of sense. If you know the Force kind of seems to be strong with you and then you kill someone, definitely time for the Sith Academy. He first appeared in the Deceived trailer for the video game Star Wars The Old Republic. Following his training, he became a Sith warrior, serving in the Imperial Army. As an apprentice to Darth Vindicant, he took the name of Darth Malgus for himself. After suffering a dramatic defeat and injury on Alderaan, he was forced to permanently wear a respirator. Initially, his attempt to invade Alderaan had actually been successful, with him actually launching a pretty efficient surprise attack, but afterwards the Republic managed to push back the Sith in response with their own successful counterattack, and that's where he got pretty badly injured. Number 6. Emperor Darth Revan. Darth Revan is an interesting one. Not many knew of the character's relevance as a Sith Lord, due to the Sith history only being known, of course, to Sith cultists throughout the galaxy. As such, Revan's name was mainly unknown, lost to the sands of time. Revan, however, would have a Stormtrooper Legion named after them because, fun fact, Stormtrooper Legions are apparently typically named after Sith Lords, ancient Sith Lords. In truth, Revan was a former Jedi Knight who left the Order and ended up becoming the Dark Lord of the Sith. They formed a Sith Empire, but eventually became an amnesiac who was retrained and indoctrinated into the Jedi Order, later actually used to fight against the very Sith Empire they had once built. Revan is actually the character that you play as in the game Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, and can be customized to look however you prefer them to look, with you also choosing their gender. In canon, however, Revan was established as male, with the light side ending of the game being established in lore as the canon ending, so just so you know that. Number 5. Rebel against Starro. This is the version of Harley Quinn we are first introduced to through her own Multiversity series. Multiversity, Harley screws up the DCU. In issue number 1, Harley inherits a time machine from a mysterious Professor Incredulous. Against the wishes of her crew, the Gang of Harleys and Egg Foo and Red Tool, well, Red Tool isn't really against it, but he is present for this, she decides to jump into the Way Back When machine and, of course, travels through time. While she doesn't exactly remember her entire journey, seemingly reeling from the experience alone, she does discover that her actions have somehow resulted in an alternate timeline where Starro has completely conquered the planet. She ends up being rescued by her own alternate self, who in this universe is a short-haired badass version of Harley who talks to her own bat and is part of the rebellion against Starro the Conqueror. Number 4. DCAU. Hailing from the DC animated universe, especially the corner of it pertaining to the Batman animated series, and resulting spin-off comics set in the same universe, we have kind of the original Harley Quinn, to be honest. Well, it seems a little weird to me to put her on an alternate list, since she is technically the main version of the character. There are those out there who actually still consider her an alternate because she hails from the animated universe as opposed to the comics, even though technically she came first, so she'd be the original. The Batman, the animated series version of Harley Quinn, is often depicted as being a lot more of a dangerous villain. She doesn't often hold back, and she doesn't often act as a hero, unlike the modern day comic book version of the character. This version of Harley Quinn almost seems to be virtually unkillable and has at times broken the fourth wall, implying that she is even aware that she herself is a cartoon character, which to me is pretty powerful, I would say. Harley Quinn from the DCAU appeared in the Batman Adventures comic series, and of course in the Batman the Animated Series, where she was voiced by Arlene Sorkin. Number 3. Red and Black Lantern. Although I believe the Little Black Book is supposed to be set in the main continuity, I kinda like to consider some of the really souped up versions of Harley as their own alternates. Also, Harley's kinda interesting, and I feel like even if it's main continuity, sometimes it's always kinda wonky with Harley. But although they do sort of represent a period of time in Harley's life in that main continuity, they often also stand separate from that, with their own individual tales that stand alone. And for that reason, they feel like an alternate version. Also, I'd be sad that I wouldn't get to talk about them, so here we go with one from Harley's Little Black Book. This one comes from an issue in the series where Harley Quinn teamed up with Green Lantern. Well, she kind of initially faced off against against him, but in the end saved Hal and even briefly became a Green Lantern herself. However, Harley got her hands on a Red and Black Lantern ring and became herself a combo Red and Black Lantern, which is why they fought initially, which is also pretty OP as you might imagine, and of course pretty perfect for Harley with her red and black coloring. Number 2. Hammer Harleen. Another one of my favorite versions of Harleen technically comes from a very brief period in her main continuity story. This is Hammer Harleen. Hammer Harleen is a version of Harley who appears for only a few select issues in her 2016 series. While on vacation, Harley ends up getting recruited by Granny Goodness to become a female Fury. However, this only lasts about 1.5 issues as she pretty quickly annoys Granny Goodness to the point that her powers as a female Fury are taken back away from her, and of course she ends up imprisoned instead on Apocalypse, which I mean, if you're a Harley fan, I'm sure you saw that one coming. Don't worry though, with the help of her newfound friend, Petite Tina, Harley does end up eventually escaping back to Earth. Number 1. The Offer. When people often talk about the version of Harley that they think of as the most unstoppable or most powerful version, Year of the Villain tends to be the one that fans of the character most often bring up. When it comes to Harley Quinn comics, including Year of the Villain, I feel like almost anything could actually be considered alt reality. I mean, the lead into this event in the Harley Quinn series happened through Harley reading a Year of the Villain comic itself in canon starring her. Pretty wonky. And of course, when Apex Lex offered Harley her ultimate self as part of this event, Harley actually said, "No thanks." So instead of becoming her quote unquote most unstoppable version, according to Lex anyways, Harley ultimately passed, which really makes this crazy cybernetic version of her powered by Yellow Lantern energy and a drop of Lobo's blood an alternate. Number 10. MODOK. This version of MODOK is not to be confused with the original form of the original Earth 616 MODOK, whose acronymic name ended originally in a C also. Where the Earth 616 MODOK C typically stands for computation or computing, this version of MODOK C stood for conquering. This MODOK hails from Earth 20051, first appearing in the 2000 series Marvel Adventures The Avengers. Here, MODOK successfully converts the Avengers into his own loyal minions by turning them into MODOKs. Fortunately for the Avengers, but not so fortunate for MODOK I guess, they would realize that this transformation was only temporary and would manage to break free from his control. Here, MODOK originally stood for Mental Organism Designed Only for Conquest. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and like me, you also love all the supervillains, be sure to check out our supervillain playlist for even more villainy. Number 9. MODAM. What happens when you combine MODOK with Doc Ock? MODAM! MODAM is actually a female version of MODOK. She was unique in the sense that she had long metallic Dr. Octopus-esque arms in addition to what MODOK had. She was also equipped with a doomsday chair, and of course she had lipstick because she's a lady MODOK, so you know, we gotta know. Gotta have that lipstick. Initially, MODAM was Alinka Barankova before she was transformed, although for a time she was actually suspected to have originally been Hank Pym's first wife, Maria Travoia, but we'd learned the truth. She didn't last too long in the comics, about 10 years, first appearing in West Coast Avengers issue number 36, where we thought of course that she was Maria, and dying in Captain America issue number 3 in the late 90s series of that comic. Number 8. Ultimate MODOK. This version of MODOK definitely looks a lot more terrifying than most. This version of George Tarleton was the head of AIM in terms of their research division anyways, on their space station. He ended up transforming from man to machine to just straight up monstrosity, and the transformation happened pretty quickly there. During a fight against Galactus, Vision, also of Earth 1610, turned on him. In this reality, Vision is a female android who ended up ripping off Tarleton's head after he chose to sacrifice another AI that she had grown attached to during combat. From here, Tarleton would become more the kind of MODOK we'd know him for, with his head moving around on spindly, spider-like limbs and managing to survive despite being separated from his body. At one point, MODOK returns with his own Galactus cult and even manages to take hold of and control part of the Galactus swarm. Number 7. MODOK from Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. This version of MODOK also has an acronymic name that stands instead for Mental Organism Designed Only for Conquest. The acronym was likely changed for his name in this case because he appears in an animated show intended for general audiences, and Marvel therefore probably didn't want to go with the more traditional K for killing at the end because, you know, children, while still wanting MODOK though to be fearsome here, instead of just focusing on, C for computing with C for, conquesting. This animated version of the character is pretty powerful in regards to what he can do. Not only is he a super genius who is said to rival even some of Marvel's greatest minds such as Reed Richards and Doctor Doom, but he can also fire deadly psionic bolts as well as straight up control minds. So, pretty crazy. Number 6. BRODOK. BRODOK is technically another version of another character on our list. BRODOK was created during a period in MODOK's life when they wanted to reinvent themselves by reforming. To do this, MODOK decided to work on his own image, his outer image, by building a new, more muscular, humanoid, and I'm sure what he thought was a more desirable form. In this new body, he took the name of BRODOK, which stands for Bio-Robotic Organism Designed Overwhelmingly for Kissing. However, after he was rejected, no kissing for BRODOK, he turned to the side of villainy once more, transforming those who had rejected him into monsters and causing the West Coast Revengers to reform in order to take him down. During MODOK's time as BRODOK, the capability to feel love was also added into his programming. So this is basically like an already powerful alternate version of MODOK, but with the addition of being able to love and also muscles.
Number 10. The Kingpin. The way that the Ultimate Universe handles Wilson Fisk is pretty close to how he is in the main 616 universe. He is a kingpin of crime who uses fear and money to avoid the consequences of his criminal actions. His activities are an open secret, but no one can get enough evidence together to actually stop him. Sure, he loses some fights over the course of his time in the comics, but he is unstoppable in a much more realistic and kind of depressing way because of the corruption that he has sown into the city. After obtaining a magical Egyptian relic known as the Zodiac Key, he found that without even having to use the item, it caused enough fear that he could run the city's crime almost unopposed. In a move that is an undeniable win on Fisk's part, he bought the merchandise rights to Spider-Man's likeness, meaning that he was making massive amounts of money off of his enemy. He was eventually arrested after trying to have the Ultimate Moon Knight killed, but when the Ultimatum wave washed away much of New York, all of the records of his crime were destroyed in the disaster, and he was able to go free. He was permanently stopped when he was thrown out of a window by Mysterio though. Number 9. Sabertooth. Earth 1610's Victor Creed is quite similar to the original version, with him being a bit of a psycho with claws, heightened senses, and a healing factor. He believed that humans were more cruel than less evolved animals, and therefore, mutants should be even worse. He became a ruthless killer who delighted in causing his victims as much pain as possible before he was eventually recruited to the Weapon X program. After Wolverine left the program, Sabertooth was given similar, though more extensive, adamantium upgrades, and he was sent to retrieve Wolverine. From that point on in his history, Sabertooth came into frequent conflict with the X-Men, the Ultimates, and various random heroes of the Ultimate Universe. He soon joined the Ultimate version of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, the Brotherhood of Mutant Superiority, being a consistent thorn in Wolverine's side. Sabertooth makes this list despite the fact that he is frequently apprehended or defeated because of his incredible healing factor. He has been shot, stabbed, and even decapitated, and yet he always comes back. So, though he can be defeated, he can only ever be stopped on a temporary basis. Number 8. Dr. Octopus. Doc Ock's origin is pretty much the same as his original. He gets in a lab accident that makes him able to control his metal arms telepathically, and he uses those arms to do crime. However, he is different from the classic Ock in a few ways. This version of Octavius is so linked to his arms that he can control them even when he is separated from them, such as in Ultimate Spider-Man number 54, when he summoned his arms with his mind and used them to escape prison. After Spider-Man defeated him again, Nick Fury had Ock's arms destroyed in molten steel, thinking that would stop Ock once and for all. But we found out that there was another difference between this Ock and the original. He was actually a mutant, with powers similar to Magneto's. He hadn't been controlling the arms, he had been controlling the metal in the arms. He then used this mutant ability to cause metal in the building to form together new arms for himself, and he fought Spider-Man and Spider-Woman in a cyclone of flying shards of metal. So, while the old Ock could be stopped by removing his arms, this Ock has way more ways ways to come back from a loss, and can't be stopped for long. That is, until Green Goblin beat him to death. But hey, that's why he's so low on the list. Number 7, Venom. Ultimate Venom is not an alien symbiote, but a genetically engineered suit developed by Eddie Brock and Peter Parker's dads. When Peter used the symbiote to get his black suit, Eddie became jealous and fused with a sample of the symbiote that was in storage. This caused him to become Venom. While in Venom form, he has an insatiable hunger and has to consume people at a regular rate in order to not be consumed from within the suit. He has all of the classic Venom's powers, like the strength, the healing, the ability to override Peter's spider sense, but unlike the classic Venom, he doesn't have the same level of weakness to sonics and fire. Electricity is his weakness, but his savagery makes him even more dangerous than the original Venom. He became even more powerful when he absorbed the Carnage symbiote, becoming even bigger and monstrous than before. Number 6, Namor. Namor was introduced in the 610 universe in Ultimate Fantastic Four number 24, when the Four were helping Mary Storm with her discovery of Atlantis, and they found a sarcophagus which contained Namor. The translation of the Atlantean language said that Namor was king of Atlantis before it was destroyed. However, they soon discovered that this Namor was much less noble than his 616 counterpart. A revised translation revealed that he had not been entombed, he had been imprisoned, and that he was not a king, but the most dangerous supercriminal in all of Atlantean history. He tried to seduce Sue Storm, but was rejected. He didn't take this well and went on a rampage. He went toe-to-toe with the Thing, withstood the full force of the Human Torch's power, stretched Mr. Fantastic almost to the breaking point, and smashed through Sue's force fields. He defeated the team and held the city hostage with a tsunami, threatening to destroy the city unless Sue gave him a kiss. She complied and Namor departed. In subsequent appearances, he has been a bit more chill and did lose some fights, but that debut says it all.
Number 5, Molecule Man. While attempting to fix an atomic-powered device, a 1,000,000,000,000 accident occurred, bombarding Owen Reese with radiation and transforming his body. Now, this man, Owen Reese, was the most powerful being in the entire multiverse. The accident also caused a minuscule hole between Earth's dimension and another, allowing the being who would eventually become known as the Beyonder to become aware of a universe teeming with life, which would lead to the events of the first and eventually second Secret Wars. Now, Uatu the Watcher, who used to never become involved in the events of Earth, sensed the Molecule Man and the danger that he posed. He contacted the Fantastic Four, warned them of the threat, transported them to face him, and the Fantastic Four couldn't do a damn thing to the Molecule Man, until Mr. Fantastic was able to deduce that the Molecule Man could not alter the molecules of living things. But that wasn't even a real limitation of the Molecule Man. That was just a subconscious limitation that the Molecule Man put on himself. The kicker is that, in reality, Reese's accident was caused by the Beyonders themselves. They created the Molecule Man as a singularity in every reality to basically use the villain as a device that would destroy its universe. The purpose of their experiment was to eventually destroy all the Molecule Men at the same time just to see what would happen, which was a key part of the latest Secret Wars event. But Molecule Man, being used by Dr. Doom and eventually Reed Richards, was able to rebirth the entire cosmos. Could it work in the MCU? Sure, it could, but the character would just be a plot device. I doubt they would actually use him as an actual villain. Number 4, Abraxas. Abraxas is the polar opposite of the cosmic entity, Eternity. This means his whole reason for existing is to destroy all of the multiverse, which, I'll be honest, there are a few different characters in Marvel Comics who exist for that reason, and funnily enough, a bunch of them are on this list. But Abraxas is also tied to the incredibly unstoppable cosmic entity, Galactus. Whenever Galactus would consume a planet, it would keep Abraxas in check. So, when Galactus was destroyed in a story called Galactus the Devourer, Abraxas was released and begins his path of ultimate destruction. As a cosmic entity, Abraxas's powers are essentially limitless, and his whole existence is kind of important to the universe, which means he can't really be taken out like a normal villain can. So the question of how he was defeated is kind of important. In Fantastic Four number 48 to number 50, we learned of an incredibly powerful weapon called the Ultimate Nullifier. It was used back then to threaten Galactus and stop him from destroying the Earth. Reed Richards ended up using the Ultimate Nullifier to essentially rewrite reality, remaking it so that Abraxas just never existed. Abraxas is so so unstoppable that we essentially needed a Deus Ex Machina just to defeat him. I think that if he was in the MCU, that's probably the only way they could make the story work, but I think it would basically break the whole MCU for them to do it. Number 3, Mad Jim Jaspers. When Captain Britain is sent to Earth 238 in Marvel Superheroes UK number 377 in August of 1981, we are introduced to a guy named Mad Jim Jaspers, who is the Prime Minister of England in this reality. Jim has created a cyborg called the Fury that can adapt to anything like a Sentinel can to destroy all the superpowered beings on this Earth. But that's not Jim's power. We are being delivered this information from the inside of a teapot helicopter that is immensely bigger on the inside than it looks on the outside, with the room growing and characters appearing that are already passed away or that resemble Alice in the Wonderland characters. That's because Mad Jim Jaspers is a mutant with an insane level of reality warping powers. The thing is, this character is not fully in control of his abilities. Now eventually we are introduced to an Earth 616 reality Mad Jim Jaspers, who is way more powerful than his 238 counterpart. When Captain Britain pays him a visit, Jim uses his powers to make Captain Britain believe that he was dreaming and that he has woken up out of a coma. He then gets frustrated and wipes this entire reality clean to start everything fresh. Now I don't know what the likelihood of getting Captain Britain into the MCU is, with the multiverse becoming more prominent, it's more likely, but this insanely powerful reality warper is not someone who I expect will ever make an appearance anytime soon. Number 2, the Chaos King. Amatsu Mikubashi first appeared in Thor Blood Oath number 6 in 2006, and he is the Japanese god of chaos, evil, and an aspect of the cosmic being Oblivion. Mikubashi ruled and thrived over the Earth when it was nothing more than a formless void of primordial darkness, and as such, his goal now is to bring about a new age of chaos and void and darkness. He is a primordial being who was imprisoned in Yomi, the Shinto underworld, where he remained for centuries, accruing an army of Oni, Shinma demons, and other monsters. Now during the events of Ares God of War, Chaos King attacks Olympus after he had defeated and controlled the Japanese pantheon, meaning he had already done that, and then he goes on to attack Olympus. And that was all after the fall of Asgard during Ragnarok. This is what kickstarts his mission in Chaos War, where he slays the Egyptian gods, the Celtic gods, Shi'ar gods, and the gods of Zen law. He takes out Nightmare in the Dream Dimension, destroys Mephisto, and casts Mistress Death out of Hell, making her literally run away, and releases the souls of the damned. He has the power to defeat Eternity and is practically unfazed by attacks from the likes of Zeus. God Hercules, Galactus, Silver Surfer, and Thor together could not defeat Chaos King. To win, this insanely powerful god of gods Hercules had to punch the Chaos King into a portal to an endless void of nothingness, and this was after he had already destroyed 98.76% of the universe. They wouldn't let Gore the God Butcher be as big of a threat to the gods in the MCU as he is in the comics. The Chaos King wipes out 90% of the universe. I just don't see it happening in the MCU at this time. It's just not gonna happen. And finally, in at number 1, the One Below All. In Marvel Comics, there is a character called the One Above All, who hasn't really been seen all too often, but is essentially the equivalent to God, or the creator. Now we have gods like Odin and Zeus and Thor in Marvel Comics and the MCU, but this is kinda different. The One Above All is like the god of everything, the supreme ruler of creation and compassion. It's even been represented as the writers of Marvel Comics at one point, just to give you an idea. So the One Below All, as you can imagine, is the antithesis to this, the personification of destruction and hate. Another way of looking at it is that the One Below All is the One Above All's Hulk form, although that kind of makes things a little bit more complex. The One Below All is trapped in the below place and manifests in realities through gamma and gamma mutates. Basically, this means that the Hulk and other gamma mutated beings have fractions of the One Below All's power and can be taken over by the One Below All for him to try and escape and destroy everything. In an alternate future, it actually does this, taking over Bruce Banner's body and using his power to devour the cosmic entity Eternity and eradicate all life in not only this version of the cosmos, but even going into the next iteration of the universe, ensuring that nothing in that universe will continue to be. Luckily, this is prevented in the Immortal Hulk story, but I'm telling you, Go read that story. The one above all and the one below all seem like beings that are just too conceptual that I don't know if they'd be making it into Marvel's cinematic universe. But the other part of this is that the Immortal Hulk storyline that features the one below all is way too graphic for it to be adapted to the MCU and Disney's brand. Coming in at number 10 is Kang the Conqueror. Kang is a little bit of an interesting pick for this list, as he totally can be stopped and has been multiple times. Thanks to the advanced time period he comes from though, Nathaniel Richards has an increased lifespan, making him look 40 when he's actually 7 years old. That's fine, that doesn't make him unstoppable. What makes him unstoppable is a couple of things. For starters, as most people know, Kang has a huge relationship with time. A version of this guy exists at almost all moments of the time stream, and not just one version of him, as there have been Kangs from different universes that have shown up as well. So not only can Nathaniel Richards show up at any point in the time stream in any of his numerous identities that all have their own long history, but his alternate universe versions are almost always set to make an appearance in his place. And then, on top of that, until recently, Nathaniel had the ability to transfer his consciousness to another body when he passed away. Nathaniel, Rama-Tut, Iron Lad, Kid Immortus, Scarlet Centurion, Immortus himself, Mr. Griffin, he who remains, whatever you want to call him, Kang the Conqueror is pretty much unstoppable. Number 9. Galactus. The being formerly known as Galen of the planet Ta lived before the modern cosmos in the previous cosmos. Galen gestated with the sentience of the universe for billions of years, transforming into the devourer of worlds, finding sustenance by ingesting entire planets, preferably those with living sentient beings that have much more energy for him to harness. Now when Galactus destroys and consumes a planet, he is sort of bringing balance to the universe, kind of like how life is given and taken away every day on Earth, which makes him an essential part of the universe. He's known for the destruction of the Skrull Empire and has attempted to devour the Earth so many freaking times. And I guess other planets for that matter too, or whatever. Galactus is also famous for his heralds such as Silver Surfer and the Cosmic Ghost Rider, and so many others. And while they are all powerful beings themselves, usually even before they gain the herald power boost, they don't hold a candle to Galactus himself. His only caveat is that Galactus's power depends on his planet's consumption. So a weakened Galactus has been taken out before, but if he eats like 4 or more planets or something, he's been able to defeat multiple mad celestials all by himself. He's powered by food, and I think pretty much all of us can understand that. Coming in at number 8, Abraxas. Abraxas is the polar opposite of the cosmic entity Eternity. So, being the opposite of Eternity, his whole reason for existing is to destroy all of the multiverse, which, I'll be honest, there are a few different characters in Marvel who exist for that reason, and funnily enough, a bunch of them are on this list. Abraxas is tied to Galactus too, because when Galactus would consume a planet, it would keep Abraxas in check. So, when Galactus is taken off the board in Galactus the Devourer, Abraxas is released and begins his path of ultimate destruction. As a cosmic entity, Abraxas' powers are essentially limitless, and his whole existence is kind of important to the universe, which means he can't really be taken out like a normal villain. So, how the heck do the heroes come out on top against this guy? Well, in Fantastic Four number 48 to 50, we learned of an incredibly powerful weapon called the Ultimate Nullifier. It was used back then to threaten Galactus and stop him from destroying our Earth. Now the heroes, specifically Reed Richards, ended up using the Ultimate Nullifier to essentially rewrite reality, destroying reality and remaking it so that Abraxas just never existed. That's the route we had to go to here. Kinda makes you wonder why Marvel would even write such a powerful villain in the first place, but if you're enjoying this list so far, well, we've got a ton more like it on our channel that you should definitely subscribe to. Or you could just give a thumbs up to this video, that's also helpful. Thanks. Number 7, Mephisto. Within the Marvel Universe, Mephisto is, for all intents and purposes, the devil. He isn't actually. Technically, he is a demonic hell lord who rules over his own hell-like dimension and enjoys stealing people's souls by tricking them, and he does that by pretending he is the actual devil, playing on people's fears, so basically, he's the devil. While Mephisto is within his dimension, which he calls hell, he is immortal, omniscient, and impossible to destroy. It's only when he ventures into other realms that he can be defeated, but doing so just kind of returns him back to his own dimension. He has been a major player in the Marvel Universe since his creation and has been either a key or supporting player for many major events. He was the Snake in the old Adam and Eve story. He was directly responsible for the creation of Ghost Rider. He's infamously erased the history of Peter Parker and Mary Jane's marriage in order to save Aunt May's life. I mean, he even popped up a hotel out of the ground in Las Vegas that manipulated the citizens and let him take their souls. He has been defeated and outmaneuvered multiple times, but he has never permanently been stopped. Number 6, the Phoenix Force. Now it's important to say the Phoenix Force is not a villain, technically. It is a cosmic entity representing all life in the Omniverse. The Phoenix Force will exist as long as there is, was, or will be life. If the Phoenix Force were to be destroyed, if that were even possible, all life would follow after it, as well as the ability for life to have begun in the first place. The Phoenix Force is just a force of nature, but it has been used as a darker force of power in the past. For example, when it inhabited Jean Grey during the Dark Phoenix saga. It was at this time the entity was a villain, using Jean's insane levels of psychic power, which it then amplified to godlike levels. With this entity inhabiting her body, Jean and the Phoenix destroyed an entire solar system and attacked her fellow X-Men. Jean had to actually bring her own end just to stop what was happening, and when the Phoenix regained its memories of all the evil it had done, it brought Jean back to life to help make things a little better. And that's not the only time. There was the whole X-Men vs Avengers thing, and there was that time that Thane, Thanos' son, had the Phoenix Force. Almost every time the power of the Phoenix Force comes up, it usually corrupts its bearer and makes like a big stink. Like a huge stink. Big old fart. Number 5, the Fury. Many people may actually not know of the Fury, and there's a rather simple reason for that. The Fury came about in Marvel Superheroes UK, which is Marvel's attempt to branch out to British audiences and revamp Captain Britain. But it was also a way for Marvel to open up and explain the concept of the multiverse, and this all happened in the Crooked World story. This story deals with one of the most powerful reality warping mutants ever, named Mad Jim Jaspers on Earth 238. But he's not even the focus of this point. Mad Jim Jaspers became the leading political leader in England, rallying the people against superheroes, and he created what was essentially a robot called the Fury, for the sole purpose of taking down superheroes, and my lord, the Fury is good at it. In the matter of 2 years, the Fury decimated every single superpowered being on Earth 238 except for Jim Jaspers. The Fury is similar to the Sentinels we see in the X-Men Days of Future Past movie, because this robot can analyze superhuman powers or any threat and modify its own defenses and capabilities to combat it. But it can also fire extremely potent energy blasts and even restore itself after being completely destroyed. The Fury ends up completely obliterating Captain Britain, causing him to be revived. And that was all a test for Captain Britain to face the much more powerful Mad Jim Jaspers from Earth 616. Now, the universe of Earth 238 gets destroyed, but the Fury adapts to even that and develops the ability to travel across dimensional barriers to continue its mission. The only thing going against this being is that he doesn't have a ton of appearances, so it's kind of hard to judge him against other beings.
Number 4, Thanos. Thanos was born on one of Saturn's moons, Titan, and had the deviant gene, which gave him thick purple skin as well as superior strength and heightened powers. He fell in love with a woman who turned out to be Death, and dedicated his life to impressing her by destroying as many living things as possible. Thanos has conquered countless worlds in his quest to impress Death, and is responsible for unleashing unspeakable horrors upon them. For instance, when he conquers a world, it is not uncommon for him to demand a tribute of the heads of everyone from the ages of 16 to 22. This insane demand is part of his plan to fulfill a request from Death to rid the universe of any of his offspring, and rather than put in the time to find out where and who his children are, he chooses to save time by implementing this method. As he is pretty much unstoppable for anyone but the most powerful superheroes, most planets are forced to go along with his insane demands. In his most iconic moment, he came up with a plan to acquire the Infinity Gems and wipe out half of all life in the universe in order to impress his love. Unlike many other evildoers who make these elaborate plans and then fail, Thanos actually pulled this off, getting all the gems and using the Infinity Gauntlet to enact his deadly romantic gesture. character.
Number 3, the Void. I think one of my favorite things that Marvel's done is create the Sentry. Essentially a Superman-like character, but like, in my opinion, way cooler. A large part of what makes him so much better is that while he is essentially a godlike superhero who inspired all the other heroes who exist, he also has a dark persona called the Void. The Void went on a rampage that took the lives of around 1 million people and almost destroyed Manhattan. And so, Sentry made the decision with other heroes like Reed Richards and Doctor Strange to cause the entire world to forget about his existence. Now, in New Avengers, which started in 2004/2005, the Sentry comes back to the world, and through a series of events, the Void also returns. Full rosters of the Avengers, X-Men, and the Fantastic Four all went to take on the Void, and they couldn't do a damn thing. Only the Sentry himself could really subdue the Void, and it, in classic supervillain fashion, vowed to come back. And it totally did. In the Siege event, Norman Osborn decided to attack Asgard, and he used the Sentry to do this. Problem is that the Sentry ended up unleashing the Void, and it totally obliterated Asgard completely, taking out Loki in the process. This did actually branch off into a what-if story where the Void was never stopped and destroyed every superhero on Earth, and then went off into the universe to basically do the same thing. The Void exists as long as the Sentry exists, and the Sentry keeps on coming back to life every time he somehow gets defeated. The Sentry is basically a god, and the Void is this god's devil. Number 2, Zom. Just because Zom looks like your uncle's hairy big toe does not mean that you should underestimate him. Zom is one of the most powerful and scary extra-dimensional entities in existence, being described as worse than a dozen Umars. Umar is the sister of Dormammu, for anyone who wanted to know. Now, speaking of Dormammu, it took all of his power plus the help of the cosmic being Eternity just to restrain Zom with the magical chain called the Links of Living Bondage and with an object called the Crown of Blindness. And with these tools, these massively powerful beings managed to trap Zom in a jar. Now, I know it sounds silly, I'm downplaying it. It was actually an amphora, and Zom was trapped in a quote world beyond worlds in a quote time beyond all time. That was just his origin story though. Eons into the future, in Strange Tales number 156 from 1967, Doctor Strange unleashed Zom in a fight against Umar, but that was a mistake because now Strange had no way of taking on Zom, like at all. He had to turn to the Living Tribunal, the personification of multiversal law, the representative for the One Above All, and the highest authority in the multiverse, just to banish Zom. Zom wasn't really released again, but Strange did channel Zom's power in a fight against Worldbreaker Hulk when that event happened, and using that power he did indeed pummel the hell out of the Hulk until Strange started to lose control and pass out. Lastly, in Doctor Strange's final recent moments, he was taken down by the Hood, who held an assault on the Sanctum Sanctorum with like 50 other villains, and Strange managed to rise again, but channeling the power of Zom, which he used to take out everyone. Then, Strange left the mortal plane.
Number 1, the One Below All. So, the One Above All is the ruler of the multiverse and the creator of all life in it. Although he is the source of love and good, he also has an evil form known as the One Below All, who is the personification of hatred and destruction. The ruler of the lowest point of reality, the below place, it is able to manifest itself on Earth through the mutagenic form of gamma radiation. This means that when Bruce Banner was caught in the gamma bomb, he was infused with this dark entity's power. The One Below All wants to become the only remaining thing in the multiverse and to destroy everything else. As he is incapable of having his own personality without a host, it waited until Hulk's father, Brian Banner, died to merge with him and take on his personality. The leader eventually managed to absorb Brian's soul in hopes of learning more about the One Below All, but was possessed by it instead. He is a terrifying foe who can never really be killed, and who, as a dark aspect of the One Above All, is technically also the creator of everything he's trying to destroy. If you want more information on the One Below All, check out our video attempting to explain the Immortal Hulk, where he is the puppet master pulling all the strings against the Green Goliath.
Number 10. Harley Quinn, the animated series. I love this version of Harley Quinn. She is definitely one of my favorites and definitely one of the most unstoppable versions of the character that I have seen. Even when you feel like there is no way that Harley and her crew will be able to survive and move forward, they have a tendency to always come out okay, and often even on top, even in the most dire and bleak situations. Harley Quinn here is also an extremely stubborn and determined character who fights to make a name for herself and achieve notoriety as a famed villain, and for that we love her and must pay respects. Harley Quinn from her own animated series is voiced by Kaley Cuoco. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, be sure to show us that you love us by clicking that like button. Boop. Number 9. Batman the Damned. Not only is this version of Harley completely terrifying to behold, but she is also fairly deadly as well in practice. After the Joker was killed, this version of Harley decided to start dressing up as him and terrorizing Gotham in his stead. At one point, she even almost takes down Batman herself. Possibly even more frightening to consider when it comes to her power is that Harley herself was likely mistreated by the Joker and uses this to fuel her own sense of brutality and violence. While I would still say this Harley was initially pretty unstoppable, this version of Harley also has, what do you call that, when you're like a corpse and you have those scars? She got those, so I feel like if you got that and you're alive, and I'm just saying, that seems pretty crazy to me. While I would still say this Harley was initially pretty unstoppable, it should be noted though that she was eventually forced to rein in her attack on Batman. You know, because it is Batman, so at the end of the day. Also, it's literally a series named after him. Sadly, we don't have a Brian Azzarello Harley Quinn the series. Or maybe fortunately we don't have that. I don't know if I'd want that, to be honest. Number 8. Old Lady Harley. Old Lady Harley is pretty epic. For those who are unfamiliar, she makes her first appearance in Harley Quinn issue number 42 from the 2016 series, aka Volume 3. Volume 3 total overall. This version of the character exists in a DC parody version of the Old Man Logan universe from Marvel. Much like in Marvel's Old Man Logan, the world and specifically NYC and Coney Island have pretty much gone to hell, becoming a post-apocalyptic landscape. Despite being older, Harley ends up returning to Coney Island and ending a turf war by battling her gang of Harley's members, claiming the title of ruler of NYC by beating their unsuspecting selves handily. Number 7. DCU. Whether we're calling it the DCEU, standing for the DC Extended Universe, or the rebranded version that we now know, the DCU, simply standing for, you know, DC Universe, the live-action world of DC definitely has one of my favorite versions of Harley Quinn, played by Margot Robbie. Why do I think she's so unstoppable? I mean, have you seen her in James Gunn's The Suicide Squad or Harley Quinn Birds of Prey? She's completely unstoppable in both. In The Suicide Squad, Harley gets kidnapped, and while the squad make a plan to rescue her, she actually ends up escaping all by herself. That's right, Harley rescues herself here. In Birds of Prey, there are many moments where she seems completely invincible to me. My favorite is probably the car chase scene, which we get near the end, where she goes after Cassandra Cain, who's kind of being held hostage at this point by Black Mask, and Harley actually goes after them while they're in a car on roller skates with the help of Helena Bertinelli's Huntress. It's epic. Also, if you haven't watched Harley Quinn Birds of Prey yet, what are you doing? It's so good. Number 6. Bombshells. I think one of my favorite versions of Harley around is the Bombshells version, who also happens to hail from one of my all-time favorite universes in the DC multiverse. Don't you know? In Harley Quinn's series Harley's Little Black Book, Harley even teams up with this alternate version of herself, and together, well, not really working together, but more working separately and it kind of just working out. Well, rather Bombshells Dr. Quinzel working, and main continuity Harley just kind of messing around and getting lucky how she usually does. They end World War II. I don't know about you, but to me that feels pretty unstoppable. That's a big task even in an alternate fictional universe. That's a big task even in the real world. The Bombshells universe is actually set during the time period of World War II and imagines what our heroes, specifically our female heroes and anti-heroes or villainesses, would be like if they existed back then. Number 5. Darth Talon. While I feel like female Sith Lords are weirdly rare, Talon is a great one who really makes up for the lack of quantity of Sith ladies with just straight up quality. Talon herself is visually striking, covered head to toe in Sith tattoos. Each of these tattoos were earned through ritual combat. She was the apprentice initially of Sith Lord Darth Ryan, but would betray him at the command of Dark Lord of the Sith Emperor Darth Krayt, separating his head from his body with her lightsaber, as, you know, a lot of Sith Lords love to do that. Talon would become one one of 2 of Krait's most loyal followers and apprentices, and when he was eventually defeated, she actually ended up going into hiding, continuing to operate in the shadows, striving to serve the needs and accomplish the goals of the One Sith, which is sometimes also known as the New Sith Order. Darth Talon was created by John Ostrander and Jan Duursema, and was first introduced in the Dark Horse comic series Star Wars Legacy. Number 4. Ajunta Pall. Ajunta Pall was the first Dark Lord of the Sith, the very first one. Although being the first ruler of the First Order of Siths, he did not have a Sith name that he was known by, at least not one that I was able to find, instead being simply known as just Ajunta Pall or Master Pall to his followers. As indicated by his title, Pall was once a Jedi and Jedi Master, a member of the Jedi Order. He began to study alchemy during his time as a Jedi and would discover how to create and shape life. Despite this impressive discovery, the Jedi Order did not celebrate Pall, but instead feared him and his newfound power, deeming it as part of the dark side of the Force and condemning him. For this, he was kicked out of the Jedi Order, who then attempted to basically erase the knowledge of his discoveries in order to prevent anyone else from tampering with this newfound power. Frustrated at having been judged and rejected, Master Pall and his followers declared war on the Order, beginning the period known in history as the 100-Year Darkness. Pall comes from the expanded universe and I believe first appeared in the Dark Horse Star Wars comics. Number 3. Darth Bane. Darth Bane, while perhaps not as well known in terms of Sith and Sith Lords, is actually quite an important Sith in terms of their history. He is the creator of the Rule of Two. The Rule of Two maintains that at all times there can only be 2 Sith, a Master and their apprentice. Bane actually created the Rule of Two to protect the Sith, after being the lone survivor of the Jedi-Sith War. Bane believed that the Sith's competitive nature and their focus on destroying one another had ultimately weakened them to the point that, he was the last one. So he created the Rule of Two to help them better, somewhat, work together, thereby preserving them and their beliefs. The Jedi-Sith War happened about 1,000 years prior to the events of the Clone Wars and resulted in almost all of the Sith being wiped out by the Jedi Order, save for Bane. The Rule of Two might seem like a small thing considering that it doesn't seem to, greatly increase the Sith's numbers, only going from 1 Sith at the top to like 2 of them, but it actually was successful in prolonging their survival thousands of years into the future. After the death of Darth Bane, who was killed supposedly by his own apprentice, the Jedi believed they had succeeded in wiping out all of the Sith, and a 1,000-year era of peace was ushered in. However, his apprentice survived, becoming the new Master. With the Jedi left unsuspecting, this actually allowed the Sith to plot in the shadows, spreading their influence throughout the galaxy and bolstering their power in secret. Darth Bane first appeared in Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Number 2. Darth Zanna. Darth Zanna is relatively unknown even within the world of Star Wars itself, but still serves a super important role in the continuation and evolution of the Sith. Zanna was the apprentice of Darth Bane. She was trained to carry on the rules and teachings of Bane, including the self-preserving Rule of Two. We don't know much about her, or even really how she killed her master, but it's believed that she fought and killed Bane in a duel. Zanna has only been mentioned a few select times in Star Wars media, and is not only a mysterious figure to Star Wars fans, but also to characters within the world, as accurate historical records were, not really kept in regards to her life and her story. She was actually first mentioned in the novel Star Wars Episode 1: The Phantom Menace by Terry Brooks, based off the film, of course, of the same name. Here, Darth Zanna was first wrongfully referred to using the pronoun him, and this would actually later be corrected in other media, where instead it would be established that Zanna used the pronouns of she, her. Now we know Zanna probably lady. Be cool to actually hear more about Darth Zanna. I would be interested. Number 1. Emperor Darth Vitiate. Darth Vitiate is quite the Sith. While to me Darth Vitiate is not as well known, if you go hard when it comes to Star Wars, there is a chance that this is a Sith Lord you might recognize thanks to his extensive history and his impressive feats. Truly, this is a Sith Lord that earns the unstoppable part of this title. Darth Vitiate is the son of the Sith Lord Drameth. Even growing up, he showed a great penchant for power and influence, conquering his own village and people by the age of 10 on planet Madrius. Hearing of this, Lord Drameth came to see for himself what chaos his son had wrought and was killed by his son. Unafraid and filled with brazen confidence, Tenebrae, as he was known at the time, would end up making his way to Dark Lord of the Sith, Marka Ragnos, where he would prove himself and be rewarded with the title of Sith Lord, becoming known as Lord Vitiate. He would also go on not just to become a Sith Lord, but also take for himself the title of Emperor. Vitiate would set out with his forces to once more find and reclaim the Sith homeworld of Dromund Kaas, ushering in the new dawn for his Sith Empire. Empire. Seeking complete immortality, Vitiate also sought to gain more power and in essence, basically become a god, becoming probably one of the most ambitious Sith Lords we have ever known in Sith history. Vitiate and his empire were first alluded to in the video game Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. Number 2, the Sith Lords. Number 5, MODOK, father of Maestro. This version of MODOK could be considered more powerful considering that he's kind of the main one responsible for the creation of Maestro. You know, one of the most powerful versions of the Hulk to have ever existed. This version of George Charlton hails from the alternate future belonging to Earth 9200. Here, the world is destroyed by a nuclear attack, and MODOK and AIM end up being the organization to help attempt to save the human race, or what's left of it, by kidnapping those who were successfully mutated by radiation. The hope is to one day rebuild civilization using these people that they've kidnapped. One of these people that they kidnap is of course the Hulk. Being that the Hulk is so strong and, well, pretty unruly, they keep him in stasis in a virtual reality program. However, eventually this VR program begins to fall apart as time goes on, and Hulk comes out of stasis. While MODOK explains what happened and why AIM kept him in stasis, asking now for Hulk's help in rebuilding society, the Hulk actually rejects MODOK's pleas, instead deciding to venture out on his own to explore what is left of the world and eventually of course becoming Maestro. MODOK would end up later being killed by Maestro when he attacked AIM's headquarters, but not before MODOK was able to free the Abomination, updating him on the situation before setting him free to get revenge for MODOK on Maestro. Number 4, MODOK Superior. This MODOK is an alternate in the sense that he is a clone. He hails from the reality still of Earth 616, the main reality. He was created from a clone brain of George Charlton himself, but given a completely new body and a new personality. This version of MODOK would end up as a member of Intelligentsia and would surprisingly, temporarily forge an alliance with S.H.I.E.L.D. At one point he almost betrayed S.H.I.E.L.D. and enacted a plan to destroy them before he realized that he was actually in love with Maria Hill, which prevented him from following through with said plan and resulted in him ultimately leaving S.H.I.E.L.D. This version of MODOK would continue down a path for good and would eventually set his sights on saving the world rather than destroying it, becoming a hero. He would temporarily control Ultimo's body, becoming Ultimodok. Although for a good while MODOK Superior had acted as a hero, he would return to the side of evil and more recently has even been spotted in the X-Men comics where he attacked a cruise ship. Later he ended up being rescued and recruited by Orcus as a contractor. MODOK's extremely intelligent and computational mind grants him the ability to basically see into probable futures. He also is considered to be tougher than the original MODOK as he doesn't have as many nerves, so he's not as capable of feeling pain. This version of MODOK was also the one who for a time lived as BRODOK, and he's kind of become like the main MODOK I think now, but still, you know, he wasn't the original MODOK, so I feel like we can count him. MODOK Superior. Number 3, Stop Motion MODOK. Probably one of my favorite versions of the character comes to us from Marvel's MODOK, a short-lived stop-motion animated series that only got one season sadly, despite it being a strangely amazing series, who honestly, if you haven't seen it, you should go watch it. I don't really spoil anything in this point, I'm just gonna tell you about it a little bit. In the show, Patton Oswalt voices MODOK, who starts off season 1 as the head of AIM before being tricked basically out of his position as he begins to go through a midlife crisis with his family, with even his wife, Jodie, seemingly turning on him and asking for a divorce. Despite the trials and tribulations that MODOK goes up against, he perseveres, and it is for his resilience that I feel like he also deserves a spot on our list, despite his many failings throughout the show. And honestly, even despite those many failings, MODOK still manages, I will say, to end up on top in many ways, although often at the cost of his own and others' happiness. This version of MODOK also seems to have the actual family that MODOK Superior saw in a vision. However, this family wasn't real for MODOK Superior, who after learning that they didn't exist, sought to basically create his own version. Whereas for this version of MODOK, they're just his family and they're real and they do exist. Number 2, Baby MODOK. These baby MODOKs might actually be some of the most powerful ones in existence, and if they put their little MODOK minds to it, possibly the most unstoppable. And while they haven't accomplished too much in the comics, they do have reality warping powers when they work together, which honestly, that's pretty crazy. They made their first appearance in Miss Marvel issue number 39 during Dark Reign, where Miss Marvel was actually Carla Sofin, aka Moonstone. They also appeared and helped Carol Danvers as Miss Marvel when she returned in issue number 45 of the series. While the baby MODOKs, or storytellers as they were also known, worked for AIM as part of their Project Storyteller, having inherited inherited their powers from their elder brother Gavin, aka the character known as Storyteller, these little MODOKs also were reaching out in the hopes of breaking free from AIM. As Gavin had been freed by the heroic Miss Marvel, they attempted to contact the hero, but instead their call was answered by Karla Sofin, who of course was impersonating Miss Marvel at the time on Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers. Number 1. MODOK, Ruler of the World. This version of MODOK hails from an alternate reality seen in Fall of the Hulk's Red Hulk issue number 4. Here, on Earth 1064, the intelligentsia succeeded in their plans to conquer the world. As a result, MODOK is one of the rulers of the planet and even ends up getting himself a new human body, although his face still looks super weirdly scrunched up, I gotta say. He also ended up making Dr. Doom his fool. That's how powerful this version of the villain is. This version of MODOK exists in a vision of the future where intelligentsia also seem to bring advancement and world peace to Earth the world over with their rule. At least, that seems to be what's implied here.